Welcome back to the Oscar Project Podcast, the show where I discuss Oscar-nominated films year by year. I am your host, Jonathan Eaterberg, and today I'm bringing you an interview with director Rebecca King and star and producer Nina Yndis, two of the creative forces behind the new short film Elsa, which will be featured at the Flickers Rhode Island International Film Festival this August. Before I jump into the interview, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast player so you can get all the newest episodes as soon as they are released. If you like the interview and want to hear more, please consider leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Rebecca King was selected as one of the 10 female filmmakers to watch by Aesthetica for Primetime Network following her debut short Contenders in 2019. She has worked as a script supervisor on the HBO series House of the Dragon and on Ian Softley's The Shepherd. Nina Yndis is an actress and producer most recently seen in the psychological thriller The Box, and has appeared in Peaky Blinders, Call the Midwife, and the hugely popular video game Final Fantasy XVI. They join me today to talk about their latest collaboration, the short film Elsa. Nina and Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
So I want to start off by asking kind of how you became aware of stories like the one you tell in the film. Was it something that you were kind of always aware of and wanted to make a film about, or did someone bring it to your attention as something that they felt should be put on screen?
I remember vaguely learning about it in history class at school, but it wasn't a topic that was focused on at all. I think it was sort of like mentioned in passing as we were learning about the Second World War and everything that happened. So it wasn't something that I that I thought about necessarily until I was cast in Lizzie Nunnery's play. So Lizzie Nunnery is our script writer, and I was cast in her play called Narvik, which is it's a play that follows two British Navy soldiers, and one of them falls in love with Elsa Dahl, which was the character I was cast to play. And this is also the character that our film is inspired by. And it was so fascinating delving into her world and delving into occupied Norway, because you don't hear that much about Norway during the Second World War, also because it was a neutral country. So it's not a country that you delve into when you think Second World War. But it was just fascinating. Delving into Elsa's perspective and then unlocking more as audiences were interested in hearing more about Elsa's story. And that's basically what inspired us to write Elsa, the short film, and delving into this perspective, which hasn't been spoken so much about.
Excellent. And this is a little bit more directed at you, but because you play the character, obviously, but Rebecca, feel free to chime in as well. Beyond what you were just talking about, what specifically drew you to the character of Elsa in putting her on the screen like this?
Yeah. It was trying to understand her perspective and what she went through. And yeah, sort of, when you think about a woman who is branded traitor of the country because of someone that she's fallen in love with or someone that she's had a sexual relationship with, it's quite shocking, thinking about that now. But then you kind of then you delve into that she fell in love with a Nazi soldier, and you're questioning how would she do that. I think then sort of moral ambiguity was something that I found very interesting. And yeah, basically understanding why she do this. And also, it's quite interesting because she works for, or she's a woman with purpose, and she is part of the resistance. So she starts off as part of the resistance. She wants to have a voice. She wants her voice to be heard. And then, you could think that it's quite hypocritical that she ends up with a German soldier in the end. And so I think that journey was also something I found very interesting. Like, how does she go from A to B, and why? Yeah, so I think that's very complex, and that's something that really drew me to her.
Rebecca, anything? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I will chime in on Yeah. Yeah, Nina said that beautifully of the moral ambiguity. I think that was what was really exciting for us, is particularly with myself, Nina, and Lizzie in the beginning, where we were working through the script, and Lizzie did such an incredible job of like protecting the integrity of the story. But yeah, we had to ask ourselves questions all the time of, you know, how do these relationships form? And easy ways out that we see in cinema often are, you know, is this kind of like, they are like, Nina and Lois are beautiful, but we didn't want to just rely on that. And we would, I think the journey of, asking those questions of how do those relationships form, like on a base level, why do two people connect, and trying to find like not the easy routes out. And we came to this thing of, two people connecting over just like place, them being both from the same place, them both having a similar profession and engagement with like the same kind of generation, like younger children. It's just so interesting. So yeah, that was fun.
Excellent. No, I like that. We were talking a little bit before we got started, but I was kind of personally interested in the story when I first heard the premise. My father was actually a young boy during the World War II in occupied Norway. So I've heard lots of stories about that time from his perspective. It was really interesting to see it from the perspective of someone who might have been around the same age as my grandmother, his mother at the time. So why did you decide to, you said earlier that it was based on a play or kind of inspired by a play. What was the specific decision on focusing in on Elsa and not necessarily doing it from someone else's perspective?
Nina always replies with this, with the UK, they had a really great UK tour and tour in Norway, I think. And Nina said from that time, I wasn't there at that point, the audience members were going, who is this Elsa? And they were interested in that character, and that's how that journey started. And it was such a nice process engaging the crew onto this film, and also Lars and Jonas, who were so sensitive to just kind of unfolding this thing that they maybe knew less about. And
there's like Norway specifically loves making war movies, and they make really good war movies, and they're very educational. You learn about the big battles, you learn about like the big major events that happened, but they're very seldom from a woman's perspective. And this was something huge, that happened to Norwegian women, Danish women, French women, like women in occupied nations who ended up having a relationship with the enemy. And it was just kind of, I thought it was odd that no one had made, and there has been some documentaries made about it, but apart from that, it's a very underrepresented perspective of the war. And I think it's just quite interesting because it sheds light on like a nation's psychological trauma from war and what happens, when people have lived under occupation for so many years, and the need to like let out their aggression and point their fingers at someone. It's just a very fascinating and interesting thing that happened that could happen again. So, it's quite relevant in a way to things happening now. And I think it's an important subject to shed light on.
For sure. And I think it was at the end of the film, you had the couple title cards saying, forget the number, but some, 300,000, I think it was, women. A lot of women in any event were affected by that in Norway alone. And as you said, other countries as well. I also wanted to shine a little bit of a light on the role of Christian, the German soldier. Oftentimes, especially in films not made in Germany, we see the German Nazi soldiers as pure evil. They're so ruthless. But I'm sure not every Nazi soldier was, that terrible person. How important was it to show him as a little bit more vulnerable in the film through the relationship that he has with Elsa?
That's such a good question, because we actually had some battles with that as we were developing this of, there were a couple of producers we came across that did have an issue with, well, should we even be trying to empathize with that person? And these were great questions. You know, that can be difficult. And then I guess that was maybe what made us more curious of like, okay, yeah, again, like there are more questions to ask and more things to uncover. And I wouldn't say that we were trying to empathize with, Nazi soldiers' ideology, but we were trying to understand why two people would connect regardless of the uniform. And it was interesting.
Oh yeah, Lars is an amazing actor. So is Jonas, who plays Gunnar. When we were researching the subject and reading books on, these women and why they would fall in love with the German soldiers, a common theme was that these relationships were never political motive behind the relationships. And also, if you think about it, the Nazi soldiers that we see in movies, very often, they were stationed at the concentration camps, and as a soldier, you are stationed where you belong or where you would your job well. And obviously, the Nazi soldiers that were stationed in these concentration camps were horrible, awful people who were willing to kill, who were willing to do these awful things, whilst the soldiers, who were stationed in Norway, it was a neutral country, and also they had a different objective altogether. It wasn't, even though the occupation was brutal, like the initial occupation was brutal and horrible, the objective was to get the Norwegians on their side because of the Aryan race. And if anything, they were told to befriend, Norwegian women and have children with them. And so, they came in with a completely different attitude and objective. We don't see these stories because there haven't been that many stories told from this perspective before,
Right. Yeah, no, makes sense. And you mentioned him a moment ago, the third character in the triangle of the film, Gunnar, who shares my brother's name, curiously enough. So when I heard that at the very beginning of the film, I had to chuckle to myself. Now, you had obviously a very small cast, really, the only three main characters in the film, just a few filming locations. So in that respect, it seems kind of simple on the surface, but what kind of challenges did you face? You already mentioned some with the producers not wanting to have the somewhat sympathetic German character. What other challenges did you face making the film?
Just to flag that was not the current producer, Victoria.
Right.
Incredible. Actually, yeah, she was incredible. And yeah, so what other challenges did we have? I can tell you one challenge, Jonathan, was I don't speak Norwegian, which I did raise that question, by the way, to Nina. I was like, are you sure? But actually, that did become a completely liberating thing for me personally. Maybe not for the actors. For the actors, it was an utter challenge through and through. What other challenges did we have, Nina?
Well, I think my biggest challenge was acting, playing the leading role, but also being a producer on the project. And it was one of my goals with this was to get, an amazing co-producer on board who would take over during the shooting day so that I could just focus on the acting, which is exactly what happened. So, but it still poses challenges because, as a producer on a project, you're always concerned about how things, are going, the well-being of your crew and everything. So my biggest challenge was to kind of turn off my producer brain on the shooting days and only focus on the acting. But I would overhear, conversations between crew, and we're like, what's happening? And so that was my biggest challenge. But Victoria, our co-producer, she did such an amazing job, and we had an amazing production manager on board, Olivia Song, as well, and they were just such a powerhouse duo that it was actually one of the nicest sets that I've been on. And obviously led by Rebecca, who led such an amazing crew in just a beautiful way. Everyone was so focused, so quiet, and just respectful. It was really, really amazing.
Wonderful. Now, we've avoided this question so far, but I do have to ask, you already mentioned that, it was based on a play that was named, I think, after a real person, but did you face any trepidation using the name Elsa as the title to the film, since there's kind of a very famous animated character who shares that name?
Yes, actually. So basically what we thought was that Frozen's audience is our audience, and basically we just wanted to steal them. That they'll be looking to watch, Elsa the animation, and by chance they'll watch our film instead. It's a good question, and you're not the first one to mention it, but unfortunately, Elsa doll existed before, I believe, Frozen. So this has been worked for many, many years. So yeah.
And we did come across that ahead, and we were like, we should come up with a different title. But just, nothing felt right. So we stood our ground.
Good. No, I think it's the right choice, and who knows, you might get a few people looking for the animation, and they'll stumble on your film and enjoy it.
Or be traumatized.
Now, I have a couple of questions, not specifically related to the film, but before I move on to those, is there anything else you want to touch on about Elsa?
Just we're premiering next week at Flicker's Rhode Island International Film Festival. So we're very, very excited for that. And I'll be going. So if anyone's listening and we'll be there, come and say hello.
And myself and Nina are extremely proud of the crew that worked behind this. So really the thing to watch is the credits at the end, because everyone that was involved are kind of like, cherry picked from some of the best of our peers in the UK.
Wonderful. Well, we'll hope some people come check it out in Rhode Island next week. Now, this might be the hardest question I asked, but if you had to pick your top 3 films of all time, what would they be?
I can't say top 3 ever, but I can say like that engaged me recently. I did watch High and Low with my partner Kurosawa, and that was incredible. Just like the blocking of that film was mind blowing. I love Ratatouille. I was late to the game with Ratatouille, but I don't think it's like a pitch perfect film of just great storytelling. And I'll think of a third while Nina reels off hers.
The one film that sort of came to mind, I can't really mention 3 favorite films because there's so many different films that have moved me in different ways, and I will also change my mind about which films that I really like. But the one that sprung to mind was Parasite. When that came out, I remember just being absolutely blown away by everything in that film. The storytelling, just the filmmaking, the story, like the script, the acting, everything. Then you go, Rebecca. I need to think a bit more.
I'll end with Burning Lee Chandong, because that genuinely is actually one of my favorite films. I could say that. It came out not that long ago, and I still think about it. I think about it all the time. And it was this really simple love triangle, and it was a huge inspiration for how we balance sensitivity in Elsa. And I think triangles are so interesting in cinema, of how to explore a really big subject.
Excellent. Any more, Nina?
I mean, I could say that there were 2 films that inspired me to sort of go to drama school, and I feel like they were quite impactful. Again, I wouldn't say they were my favorite films, but they just impacted me quite strongly. So one of them was Cabaret with Liza Minnelli, and I just watched that over and over and learned all the songs, and ended up auditioning for drama school with these songs. And another one was Pulp Fiction, where again, it's not my favorite movie, but I was so fascinated by the dialogue in this, and ended up learning multiple of these dialogues, and just asking my friends to self-tape them or film them for fun. So it was kind of these 2 films that got me into trying to pursue the acting route.
Excellent. Well, some good selections there. Now, a little bit more of a fun question, but kind of in the same vein. If you could invite any 3 movie characters to your next dinner party, who would they be?
Oh my God.
Not the actors, the characters.
Whoa.
Characters. The Joker.
Really?
And
You'd want to have a dinner with the Joker?
Why not?
Might be a little chaotic.
The Joker, Buzz Lightyear. It's a strange combination already. The Joker, Buzz Lightyear, and maybe Babe.
Would he be the dinner? Is that what we're going for here?
That would be very strategic, just name animals.
All right, interesting choices. Nina, what about you?
Well, I guess I'd have to invite Elsa from Frozen, obviously. Mutual interests and connections. Maybe a fun dinner would be with Mr. Bean, and I'd serve him some terrible food and see what he'd do with it, how he would cope with my terrible cooking. That would be quite funny and amusing. And oh gosh, the third,
a good one.
it's a good one. Let's just say, just because we were talking about Pulp Fiction, John Travolta, the Danny in Grease, and we could sing all the Grease songs together.
There you go. That's we'll put those all 6 of those together, and that's quite an interesting dinner party for sure. Now, do you have any books that you could recommend that you've read recently? Could be fiction or nonfiction, and don't have to have anything related to movies if they aren't.
Creativity Inc. is really good. I recommend. I've bought that book for quite a few friends, including Nina's partner. And it's about how to it's the creators of Pixar, Ed Catmull. Usually, the more creative you are, the business falls down, or the more business-minded you are, creativity falls. So, how to do both. Pixar did that really well in its prime, and he breaks it down, how he managed to protect both. So that's really interesting. Wilding, which is probably really boring, but it's a book about rewilding. Someone gave it to me, a book of rewilding in the countryside. And I find that so beautiful, because it will talk about how, decay is really important for our nature. And sometimes I take that into I don't know, relationships around me where I'm if it's decay, that's still fruitful. Number 3, I'll think of as Nina is answering.
Doesn't have to be 3. This is just a however many you can come up with. So 2 is fine.
Okay. Let's do.
So a book that I've really loved that I actually want to read again is called Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. She won the Nobel Prize for this book, actually. She's a Polish writer. And it's a really interesting exploration of characters' dialogue and inner monologue. It's about a very isolated woman in the middle of the countryside in Poland. And it's just very, very interesting because you're in her mind and you see everything from her perspective. I don't want to spoil anything, but everyone should read it. It's very interesting. And then another one that I liked recently is a Norwegian book called Nei atter nei, which in English is I can't remember what the official title translation is, but it's by Nina Lykke. And again, it's a story that's written from 3 perspectives. So each chapter kind of changes the perspective of the 3 characters, and they all go through the same thing, but they have different thoughts. And it's currently being made into a TV series, I believe, but because it's so well written and the characters are so interesting. I think I come from an actor's perspective. I'm like, oh, this is I would like to play these characters. And then I am going to mention a 3rd book, and Rebecca has already told me that this is such a boring and bad answer, because we've been asked this question before.
Stop picking this book.
My sister. And it is not, it's fiction. It's such a good book. It's changed my life. And it's basically, Tim Spector is a food scientist and nutritionist who talks about our food and ultra processed foods, and like what you feed your body is what you become. And it's just so fascinating and interesting. So it just changed my entire outlook on food and diet.
Excellent. Well, we'll be sure to put links to those in the show notes where people can check those out if they're interested. And lastly, before we wrap things up, you mentioned earlier the film is shown at the Flickers Rhode Island Film Festival in August. But do you have any other projects lined up that you're working on? And also, where can people follow you both on social media so they can keep tabs on those?
Nice. So yeah, I'm currently filming at the moment on a show that'll be out later this year, and we've also on a feature production of Elsa, which is really exciting. She's written a beautiful treatment for that, and I hope I get to work with Nina, to be honest, for most of my career, because she's super fun. Like, Elsa was quite like a big project, but we also like to do little sketches together, and yeah, so have fun with Nina more. And at Women Like Elsa for people to follow, and to follow more of Elsa's journey.
That's so sweet, Rebecca. I'm the same. I just want to make films and create with Rebecca, make the feature film, start the pitching process, trying to find collaborators for that this year and next. And like Rebecca touched upon, we have a little project which is something to Rooster, and it's sort of comedy music video sketch, just very different from Elsa.
So funny. I'm sorry. It has like the guy who designed the poster for Elsa is super talented. He really laughed because he saw this image of Nina, who he's never met, with like a balaclava over her face. Like during this rap, we collaborate with our great friend Pliers, who's this incredible rapper, and he's like, all I can see is Elsa. He's like, this is my mind. Very multi-talented is Nina. She can do both.
I try. I like to do different things. Whether it's good, that's another question. But I attempt everything. And tomorrow I'm flying to Washington. I'm going to Otakon, which is a Comic-Con event, and I'm a guest speaker there for Final Fantasy 16. There's you hear different things happening, and Women Like Elsa is the Instagram handle where you can follow the film's journey.
Wonderful. Well, I really thank you both so much for the time today. It's been a wonderful conversation, and enjoy the film and love hearing the stories about making it. Sounds like you guys had a lot of fun putting it together.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your questions, Jonathan. It was nice to speak.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us and asking very funny questions.
Thank you again to my guests today, Rebecca King and Nina Yndis. Their new short film, Elsa, is showing at the Flickers Rhode Island International Film Festival, August 6th through 11th. The Oscar Project podcast is written and produced by me, Jonathan Eaterberg, with editing assistance from Joshua Eaterberg. Please be sure to come back for my next episode, where I will be speaking with director Wendy Tang of the short film Fish Tank. Until then, I hope to see you at the movies.